What we wanted to do with this year's conference was to draw on the expertise of a number of industry professionals to help us to pull together themes. And our conference is essentially focused on 3 areas. We have a focus on audiences, which has been coordinated by Alistair Hudson, Director of Middlesborough Institute of Modern Art. A focus on collections, coordinated by Janneke Geene, who's Head of Special Collections at Manchester Metropolitan University, and workforce, coordinated by Dhikshana Pering, Learning Officer for Young People at London Transport Museum. Now, Dhikshana can't be with us today for a great reason. She's on maternity leave. So we're pleased to have Tamsin Russell, Professional Development Officer at the Museums Association. And they're going to come and tell us a little bit about how they've woven together those 3 themes.
Good morning. So I'm Janneke. It's great we're all here for 2 or 3 days of exploration and sharing. We hope the collections theme of this conference will give you plenty of food for thought. There's a Chinese proverb that says, big doubt, big wisdom, small doubt, small wisdom. Looking at the sector today, and especially collections, I think we're definitely growing in wisdom. We're growing in wisdom because we are doubting more. We doubt more about the traditional narratives of history. We doubt more about our traditional interpretation of our collections. So more doubt is more wisdom. At times of great change and division, human beings fall prey to the phenomenon of homophony. Homophony is the idea of like seeks like. We want to see sameness rather than difference. In music, homophony is several voices creating one melody. Our opportunity as museums, through how we work with our collections, is to foster a sense of polyphony, where many different voices make many different melodies, but all together they form a rich whole. We know that as museums we can play a vital role. And we know that to do this, we need to be more radical, more participatory, and more socially engaged. Collections are at the heart of all we do, every day and in every way. Important themes I see developing in relation to collections are non-binary thinking, intersectionality, and a growing awareness of the social power of our existing collections and our new collecting. So much is changing in how we approach museum collections, the lenses through which we look at them as professionals, how we share ownership of them with our audiences. Audiences who are becoming more and more active participants, our partners, our co-producers, are co-curators. Collections are opened to instigate debate. Collections are used to foster activism. Collections are used as tools for social change. How and what we actively collect is changing too. For many museums, a strong sense of social purpose has become more central. It is now driving strategies, including collection strategies. If we think for a moment of the hundreds and hundreds of museums in this country and the millions and millions of people of all ages who visit, who interact with museums, who engage with museums, just imagine if as museums we all knew our social purpose and worked to realise it. Imagine the difference we would make, the difference we will make. Museums are more important than ever. The collection strand of conference explores how we can use our collections to inspire and engage diverse communities and make a difference to people's lives. We explore how we can involve audiences in interpreting collections and sharing knowledge about them. Today, one of the theme sessions, Interpreting Islam Through Museum Collections, explores how museums frame, understand, curate, and communicate themes relating to the Islamic world through their collections. Also today, you can explore what's next for museums in terms of generating income from their collections and their buildings, in should museums sweat their assets. The session will also explore where we might want to draw the line. Tomorrow, in a session entitled The Fearful Object, a panel will ask what the implications are of interpreting and displaying objects that are associated with events or activities that have the potential to upset, provoke, and challenge our visitors. Also tomorrow, in Reanimating Collections of Disability History, you can discover how deaf and disabled people have been engaged in reinterpreting collections and how the History of Place programme strives to set a new benchmark for accessible exhibitions. And finally, I would recommend you look for the intersections in the programme, and especially the Festival of Change, which at the intersections of all our themes offers great opportunities for positive doubt and creativity, encouraging radical change and the growing of wisdom. Thank you.
I'm not Dhikshana Pering, but I have had the pleasure of working closely with her, not only as part of the Manchester conference panel, but also during the development of the Museums Association New Workforce Strategy. Dhikshana's on maternity leave, and it's important to remember that whilst people may not be able to attend or participate, their competence and their vision can be shared. I'm delighted to share Dhikshana's reflections and ambitions for the workforce theme in her own words, which means I have a script. The people that work in our organisations are key to their success. They care for and bring collections alive. They engage the audiences that already visit and the audiences we know should be visiting. And we need to nurture and develop them and recruit them, not from the obvious. We regularly hear that people chose to work in the sector because they are passionate, that staff accept they earn less than their counterparts in other fields because they want to work in a creative and socially engaged place. But we must not take that passion for granted. We must make sure that our workforce is equally respected and seen as valued as other sectors, and allow them, through good practice, to live happy and fulfilling lives, and that we care for them both professionally and pastorally. More importantly, the Museums Association should be leading the way in workforce. The number of proposals that were submitted under the workforce theme for this year's conference were many. There was much overlap in subject matter, showing that there are key topics that people want to address, share and question. Our priorities for the sessions were that they be dynamic, not just stating the same obvious needs and practices that we all know need to change, but being proactive, offering real solutions to the questions of what a museum professional of the future looks like, what knowledge, experience and development they will need, what changes are needed in areas such as leadership, diversity and skills development. Answering these questions would enable our workforce to make sure they were looking ahead and able to tackle the needs of our audiences and collections in a world that we've already heard is in such flux. Sessions today addressing everything from flexible working to the questioning of diversity schemes that have run over the last 10 years are part of the programme. It's important to remember that the sessions under workforce are not just for those in positions that can affect change in recruitment, training within their organisations. The sessions can enable everyone, that's you, to take control of their career, become of that change, and to support that we have a range of sessions in the Careers Hub and in the museum practice workshops. The Museums Association, alongside having a conference theme of workforce, have also spent the last year developing a strong workforce strategy. It is already proving to deliver great support for both individuals and organisations. And alongside the salary survey, which has been undertaken and recently published, demonstrates their commitment to workforce. Most importantly, these have not only been delivered by the Museums Association, but have been delivered with deep consultation with all aspects of the membership and the wider sector. Dhikshana is extremely proud to be a trustee for the Museums Association and to have been part of the conference panel and coordinated this theme, and alongside other themes to support organisations presenting, sharing to all the delegates around what museums can change in the future. I'm also proud to have been supported by my organisation and the Museums Association to have a baby, but also be part of the sector and this conference, and to be given the opportunity to have my words shared. I'm not Dhikshana Pering. Dhikshana is on maternity leave, but I thank her for her insightful words. The new workforce strategy will be formally launched in this afternoon's AGM, and I would encourage those members to attend to hear about our commitment approach that has already been sewn into the fabric of the Museums Association's work, but also the conference over the next 2 days. Happy learning.
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm Alistair Hudson, Director of Middlesborough Institute of Modern Art, and I don't have a script. But I've been charged with the subject of audiences in this year's conference, which is kind of ironic because I don't believe in audiences. And I think this is a sort of crucial question that it's a very good moment to address, given all the subject matters and the incidents we've looked at on the screen just now. Audience is really rooted in an old idea of the museum as a broadcast institution rather than a listening institution. And I think this is a pertinent moment to move away from the idea of the audience being something out there, this group of people, this body of matter, which somehow we have to get into the museum. Somehow we have to get into our buildings. And this is also rooted in the idea of the autonomous museum, a museum separate from society, an isolation chamber, a place to get away from the mess of everyday life. So what we're facing now, clearly, is a situation where we are implicated in the mess of everyday life, where museums and galleries and our educational institutions are kind of called into question. Who they serve, what they're for, what they're doing, why they're doing what they're doing is opened up like a Pandora's box. So I think what we wanted to do with this subject was really start to look at who we are talking to, who decides, who makes the decisions, and how do we construct ourselves as a society, as a community, as a culture. So if our institutions are about culture, how are we involved in shaping that culture and driving it forward in positive ways? So this is really part of a big collective endeavour, I think, that is part of this conference, but is also part of what everybody is involved in this sector. And so I'm very pleased, actually, that we have a number of guests and friends and colleagues from other institutions at this conference outside of the UK to take part in the next 2 days' events. So I'm going to, as a script, actually, I'm going to use my snazzy conference app to just give you some of the highlights of what's coming up in the next 2 days. So there's a session today at 12 o'clock called It's Lonely Being Right, which is really a session about what we do after Brexit. Our institutions, which we thought were the kind of liberal flag bearers of where we should be as a society, suddenly are called into question as being somehow the enemy or kind of on the other side of the fence from a public that is not connected with some of the ideas we held dear to our hearts. So that should prove to be quite a fertile debate, I think. And then later on at 3 o'clock today, we have a session called The Constituent Museum. And we have colleagues here from the Van Abbe Museum and from René Sophia. And as part of the Internationale Confederation of European Museums, for the past 5 years at MIMA, we have been involved with that project called the Uses of Art. And this project was really designed to really rethink our institutions in new ways. And at the core of that was really a movement away from the idea of the audience towards the idea of the constituent and the constituent museum. So in that discussion, we will be kind of elaborating a lot of the things I've just been talking about. There's a session on art and society later on at 4 o'clock. And then tomorrow, a session on working with refugees. And obviously, we've been doing a lot of work at MIMA in this area because it's one of the key subjects of our times, as was highlighted before. And for me, it's a question of not looking at this as a problem, but looking at this as one of the great assets we have in our cultural moment, a body of people with energy, ambition, an enormous amount to contribute. And then at 12:25 tomorrow, I'm going to be in conversation with Charles Escher, director of the Van Abbey Museum, which will be hopefully an interesting moment as both of us kind of ex-Mancunians, me just about to become a Mancunian again, I think, taking over at the Whitworth and Manchester Art Gallery. But Charles, who has just relinquished his British citizenship. And so we will be discussing Britain's role in the world, the UK, the constellation of that identity, and what our culture is and where it's going, and a little bit of where it's come from. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to the rest of the conference. Thank you very much.